science has taught us in the pre-birth until 8 years is crucial in the development of humans, because experience in first years has great influence throughout the person's life cycle. And to have optimal development, children need in these years some simple but basic ingredients. Their health should be protected. They need access to regular and adequate nutrition. They should be protected against aggression and negative stress. They need stimulation, sensitive, loving relationship between children and parents, and education of good quality and early. Sadly, prior to COVID-19, there were many children for whom these conditions were not available. So children were victims of physical punishment in home. 4 out of 10 of 3 to 4 year olds had no access to early education. 6 million had malnutrition chronically, and 4 million had overweight. Clearly, with COVID-19, the situation has become worse extraordinarily, because the measures to limit these problems the COVID spread has very strong effects, particularly in the most vulnerable people and development of small children. More than ever, we need to ask ourselves what you can do and what the private sector can do. Adequate childcare depends mainly on sensitive, loving care from mothers, fathers, and caregivers.
Para eso las familias, para desempeñar su papel, necesitan, por supuesto...
To play their role, families need to be supported by the state. They need information, resources, and require the state to have favorable conditions and make adequate investment to ensure comprehensive services for protection, health, and education. It's the main responsibility of the state, but the private sector can also play a part.
Tienen un impacto enorme, sea en las comunidades, en el mercado y, por supuesto, en el lugar del trabajo. En las comunidades pueden sensibilizar a los gobiernos, a la sociedad civil, al sector privado. Pueden promocionar prácticas positivas de crianza y, por supuesto, pueden también invertir directamente en programas para el desarrollo de la primera infancia. En el mercado, las empresas pueden concientizar a consumidores, a clientes sobre la importancia de la primera infancia, y en el lugar de trabajo pueden asegurar espacios adecuados para la lactancia materna, pueden proveer centros de desarrollo infantil adecuados y de calidad, y pueden establecer horarios flexibles para padres y madres de niños pequeños y asegurar licencias de maternidad y paternidad remuneradas. Estas contribuciones pueden entonces tomar varias formas. Pueden ser contribuciones materiales directas, financiamiento de programas, contribución logística y materiales. Pueden también ser a través de una participación activa al desarrollo de soluciones concretas a través de su experiencia y su conocimiento. Puede ser contribuyendo, y a menudo de manera muy eficaz y muy decisiva, a la sensibilización del público o a la abogacía, por ejemplo, para la adopción de decisión a favor del desarrollo de los niños. Y por último, pueden hacerlo mediante de sus prácticas comerciales, por ejemplo, aplicando políticas favorables a las familias que garanticen que los padres pueden desempeñar plenamente su papel, como lo hemos dicho un poco antes. Entonces, no quiero tomar demasiado tiempo y quiero entonces pararme aquí para que tenemos todo el tiempo suficiente para escuchar a las feministas y de sus experiencias valiosas en la participación del sector privado. Agradezco por la atención y dejo la palabra aquí. Muchas gracias, Ariel.
Muchas gracias. For the people that are listening English, we're aware that there is...
Thank you. Yeah.
So, apologies, everyone. We will try to fix it very soon. So, in the meantime, I want to invite Elizabeth Lule, the Executive Director of EGDAN, to offer some welcoming remarks. Quiero invitar a Elizabeth Lule, la directora de EGDAN, a que nos salude y nos dé la bienvenida mientras se resuelve el tema de la interpretación. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Ariel, and sorry I was a bit late in joining. I was on a call trying to see how we can respond to Lebanon after the terrible occurrence there. But welcome everybody to this webinar again, and we really appreciate the collaboration with the Inter-American Dialogue in creating a platform where we can learn from each other within the region, but also across the regions. And I see so many colleagues from Africa, from Asia, who have joined. Welcome. And to the panelists, a warm welcome and thank you for your time to help us learn about the great work that you're doing during this unprecedented time. The private sector is a critical partner to governments, and I know from experience that strengthening private-public partnerships have always worked when we have crisis and emergency, and that partnership is actually what gets us the impact we need. So thank you very much, everybody, and I wish all of you great discussions and deliberations. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Elizabeth, y nuevamente.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And again, we apologize for those who are listening in English. I think it's working now.
Yes.
We have a first-class panel. 4 people who are closely associated to early childhood from the private sector. They're going to tell us about their experience from 4 countries: Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. I'm going to introduce them individually as they give their presentations. So it's a pleasure to introduce Eva Fernández, Manager of Early Childhood Development of the FEMSA Foundation in Mexico. The microphone is yours, Eva. Thank you, Ariel. I want to start thanking the Inter-American Dialogue and ACDA teams, United Way, and from United Way and UNICEF for the invitation. I'm very excited to be taking part. This is a topic which I am working on, and I'm happy to be here and see so many allies from the whole region and the world working on this so important topic. Although at FEMSA Foundation we work regionally, I'm going to focus more on the work we have done in Mexico. I also want to speak about, because I think any company has to consider early childhood as one of the best investments that they should make. Because, as I said a minute ago, as Elizabeth said, it's essential for resolving collective issues regarding early childhood. To give you a little bit of context, what we know today as FEMSA is a group of companies started in 1990 in Mexico. Today we are throughout the region with logistics, beverages, different kinds of companies. The mission is to generate economic and social value simultaneously, creating jobs and also investing in institutions. FEMSA, we've always been proud of being one of the first companies providing housing, medical services to their employees long before these institutions were enforced in Mexico by law. We are sure that the companies are more successful when they understand that their success is linked to the people and communities that they belong to. In FEMSA Foundation, it's been working since 2008 and has 3 topics that we have specialized in: sustainable development and early childhood. We try to distinguish in a long-term systemic approach on the issues we focus on, particularly encouraging cooperation and construction of trust.
En primera infancia hemos estado trabajando específicamente en 3 grandes iniciativas. Como decía yo hace un momento, buscamos siempre trabajar en colaboración y encontrar qué se está haciendo ya en la región para apoyar y fomentar ese trabajo, ¿no? Yo creo que el sector privado tiene un rol muy importante.
Plays a very important part. And can put capital, I was going to say risk capital, but I'll say capital to innovate. This is a subject where we can also provide support to the public sector, encourage innovation, and this is a very important part of it. The same as the focus on result.
La primera gran iniciativa en la que trabajamos la llamamos comunidades resilientes y ahí agrupamos el trabajo que hacemos para apoyar a familias y particularmente en el desarrollo de habilidades socioemocionales, en el tema de mejorar la calidad de servicios de desarrollo infantil y
for child development. And since last year we have also been working on how to rethink public spaces with a standpoint considering early childhood. And about innovation, I think it's important how we can work with other organizations to finance these innovations. Since 2017, we've been part of Inter-American Development Bank Fund for Early Childhood and Event Society, the foundation in Brazil. We have been supporting innovative projects, many of them with coalition between the private sector and the public sector, exploring the best ways to upscale these projects. We have also cooperated with Aceleradora por una Infancia in Monterrey, alliance with Center for Developing Child of Harvard University. For us, it has been a seedbed of programs in Mexico that we can scale up. They have a great potential for scaling up. We have a regional alliance, which we're very proud of, with Sesame Workshop, about healthy habits for children. As you know, this has become very relevant in this pandemic context, in particular, hygienic habits, nutrition, and emotional development habits. I'm not going to talk about Colombia, but we are cooperating with Colombia. Cristina is going to talk to you soon. Promoting the link between parents and children in post-conflict and marginal situations. We've cooperated with the University Los Andes, and we think that the cooperation with the academics is also essential in the sector of early childhood in the region. We also have an alliance with Tecne of Monterrey, particularly School of Architecture. We are working with advice from the Bariguira Association and Urua 95 project, where we're doing a pilot test in Monterrey to explore how we can rethink public spaces with the perspective of early childhood. Public spaces consider the needs of children and their families. Are safer, cities cleaner, and benefit society as a whole. On the other hand, we have worked on two subjects that we consider essential and I think are important to discuss here. One is positioning early childhood on the public agenda and the role as a company and from the private sector. I'm going to talk a little bit about public agenda, and I want to recognize the extraordinary work of the Dialogue for Promoting a Regional Agenda. Here in Mexico, we've been working for 4 years, meeting with different foundations who fund early childhood projects. We've made the collective called Early Childhood, Primera Infancia, CMR, Cinepolis, Lego, and Televisa foundations. We've been working together to raise awareness among parents and caregivers of the importance of the early childhood, importance of play, importance of public spaces, and a series of topics which we believe are important to position in the country. We have also supported the Pact for Early Childhood, which in Mexico has been an initiative, a very wide-reaching, far-reaching initiative of the social private sector to cooperate in cooperation with the government to establish an agenda as a country for early childhood. This is essential work which has been done in the past 3 years in Mexico.
Siguiendo el ejemplo de la Fundación María Cecilia Soto Vidigal
Following the Foundation María Soto Cecilia Vidigal with the Harvard, we have cooperated with the Lego Foundation and Temple de Monterrey and Center for Developing Childhood. We've done a series of seminars in Mexico to train public servants for establishing better public policies regarding early childhood. There's a great opportunity for working on a regional level and sharing best practices in the region and also learn from what is being done in other parts of the world. Finally, from the private sector, we also believe we have an important role to play as corporate foundation. We're a hybrid. We're part of a social sector, but we're also part of a company. We have a double responsibility. One, to invite more companies to say, this is a subject connected to the issues we're most concerned about as a region, how to resolve disequality and inequality and how to close gaps regarding education or health, access to healthcare, and issues such as violence. What we see in the cities comes from home and vice versa. All these are complex problems that require the private sector to be involved directly and to cooperate closely with the public sector. In addition to investing in early childhood, we have a role to play in how we use our own channels to raise awareness and as a company to offer that kind of help, how to promote maternal breastfeeding in the company, how do we promote flexible schedules, all these topics which have been magnified by the pandemic. We have mothers and fathers, and particularly mothers, we know how these problems have become more acute during education at home. We've been working on these issues together with the IFC for a study for one of our companies on family childcare. Last year in Mexico, with Ready Nation, we and other organizations, local organizations, we had a forum to specifically speak about the role that companies can have in human resources regarding early childhood. We did a study with the Mexican Competitivity Institution, what they call as balance between work and life. I consider should be called integration between work and life. So we talked about the roles and how all these gender topics, work topics have great impact on early childhood. To be brief, and not to go into how subjects of how COVID has affected what we're doing, I think one of the ideas that the pandemic has left us is that it has opened up more spaces for cooperation, communication, such as what we're doing now in Mexico too. We have been able to work with other organizations, foundations for the family, corporate foundations, and we're coordinating with Early Childhood Committee or Childhood Committee. It's an initiative known as called Ensamble to see how we can support education, remote education, and other issues that arise with the pandemic, and how we can support other initiatives by leveraging United Way, Save the Children, and organizations like this for issues that affect the whole region. Personally, I'm concerned about migration and how we're going to work on it. People who are crossing frontiers. We need to think about the pandemic and how the migratory population is being affected. No doubt also family violence, which has been increased and is having effects on families and children. And finally, I would talk about cooperation. These topics require us to work together as a team. It's a great opportunity. There's a lot of interest of all of you to be here, and all this interest seems to be an opportunity for us to join together and cooperate. So with this, I will close my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Eva. Now I'm going to invite Cristina Gutiérrez, Executive Director of United Way Colombia. Thank you. There's the video. Greetings to everyone who's listening to us, and thank you to the hosts of this space. I will try to respect my time, and I want to organize my information so I can tell you what we're doing at United Way in Latin America. United Way, in addition to Latin America, is in nearly 40 different countries. The way we work enables us to work together with more than 60,000 allies, enabling our impact to be increased in all territories. In Colombia, we connect companies, individuals, and organizations. We try to encourage solutions for education, preventing and reducing school desertion from early childhood to secondary school. Right now, we have nearly 200 companies who are members here in the country. This shows the importance that the private sector has for us in this kind of work. I want to also tell you about what it has been like to transcend traditional alliances. There are 4 important foundations in the country. We're the 4th. Pies Descalzos, Carulla. They have worked attempt to articulate efforts and improve quality in early childhood services in the country. With this Impacto Colectivo vehicle, we have tried to find a way to look at the way the foundations usually make the link between private-public sectors in order to have greater impact on a systemic view of early childhood problems in the country. For more details about the work, I'll tell you that the premises that have characterized the work of this initiative which now have a collective impact. This was started by Stanford University about 10 years ago for us. The first point is that usually collective impact works better more as a local view. But we are more ambitious. We have a national transformation aim. We have prioritized several territories in Colombia, and we're looking at how by identifying early childhood problems and the different actors involved and possible solutions, we generate solutions with a systemic approach, which through the territories can generate evidence of those solutions and provide information to the system, the national public system, in order to take decisions based on evidence. Historically, I think the same is true in other countries, we found that very often decision makers do not make decisions based on investigation and evidence, but rather just taken out from who knows where. We also want to show through this initiative is that based on evidence is what good decisions should be based on evidence. One of the premises we work on is that it's important to consider innovation as the different actors are driving the different solutions in the territories for early childhood. We constantly are using innovative methodologies looking for those solutions. Strengthening and articulation constantly of the different actors throughout the territory is essential to achieve a systemic change in the territories. A key point and lesson learned is understanding diversity as a virtue in what is collaborative and collective. We very often have our own initiatives, our own programs, and we have to leave aside our ego and be able to work collectively where there are common aims. And we found that this is where we can really make a difference. This has been another lesson learned, very important. To round it out, about collective impact, I want to tell you about 5 aspects which provide success to us or has worked for us, and this has been documented by the university. These are success cases. Common agenda, which is what I was trying to explain, agreeing on what is the common understanding, shared understanding of the problem and approach to change. Having that agenda as a vision, which are the actors, what are the resources and the roles and the impact of the issues, and understanding of the solutions that we want to achieve through the interventions. One very important aspect also is key for collective impact is to have shared measurement. Each one has to bring to the table what they've done with their own instruments, and we need to agree on a single way of gathering information and of being accountable about if we are achieving what we have proposed. This is quite difficult, maybe the most difficult on this road, but very important to achieve. Mutual reinforcement actions. We all come to the table recognizing the strengths of the other one. It's a culture of continuous learning where you need to be open to change, open to adapting, and valuing diversity. Continuous communication that we have had with our different allies has enabled that valuation of the work of the other to always be present and to make our work grow, the work that we do for the community. Finally, another factor which is key is, as each organization has its own life, additional projects, the day-to-day, we are very busy. Therefore, you need a structure, a separate structure to support the coordination of that common agenda and the common aims. Otherwise, each of our own day-to-day situations overwhelms us and doesn't allow us to put into action the collective impact. This has been something done by the foundation. It has brought private investment. It has brought lessons learned. It's not the only thing we've done from the foundation. There are other initiatives apart from early childhood. There's been an important role from the foundation. We have made a documentary which is available to all of you. You can write to us, and we can put the link on the chat so that you can see this documentary, which leads us to identify from it's called Brain Matters. It's about investment in early childhood. This shows the passion of some business people who were convinced of the importance of this topic. And today we have this documentary, which is amazing, and it's available to everybody, for teachers, parents, business people. It's available to anybody who wants it. Really wonderful. And it's well worthwhile investing in this. We also work with collaborators of our companies very closely to link our impact to those collaborators so they can understand why the company is committed to the different programs and initiatives. Eva is an initiative which has been wonderful because it has brought us closer to the more vulnerable communities in Colombia and has proved to be relevant, replicated by the University of California through the University of Los Andes and many foundations and allies. Thanks to those alliances which multiply impact, now we can also generate evidence and good practices through various communities in Colombia. I could talk for a long time about this, but I realize that I just have 10 minutes, so I'll stop here. and leave time for the other panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cristina. Now I invite Grácia Fragalá, Vice President of the Higher Council for Social Responsibility, Director of FIESP in Brazil, the Federation of Industries of Sao Paulo State. I thank Grácia in advance for the effort of doing this in Spanish. Hello. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you. I think I'm without... Okay, here I have an image. So it's a pleasure to be with you and share the experience of the industry in Brazil in favor of development of early childhood. Thank you so much for this opportunity. The Federation of Industries of Sao Paulo State is the largest in its kind of Brazilian industry, represents 130,000 industries from different sectors of various production chains. It includes 130 employer unions, has 13 strategic superior councils, among which is the the Committee for Social Responsibility, and executive organs such as the committee, and which I am in charge of. What do we do in the areas of social responsibility? Our purpose is to integrate social questions with business, social issues with business. For us, social responsibility is part of the business, company business. So to encourage socially responsible action from industries is an important part of our action. We support the strategies of implanting actions for the agenda for 2030. And we support companies in the integration of the Sustainable Development Goals to their business strategies. Why am I giving you this introduction? To tell you that according to this, we chose early childhood as a priority, because we understand the impact it causes on several of the Sustainable Development Goals. It acts like an accelerator of that development. We started with a program that we call CIESP for early childhood, with the aim of accelerating, using it as a leverage for the comprehensive development of children of 0 to 6 years by means of actions and programs for families, schools, and communities. We work on two fronts, basically. One is a project that we call Business People and Businesses for Early Childhood. It was created to encourage business people to act as ambassadors and investors in the cause of early childhood. We held several workshops for sensitization and training for them to be able to grasp the concept that this thing about neuroscience and its importance for the life of children and its impact on society. And so they can talk to their peers. Because one thing is us, the people who act with early childhood. One thing is when we talk, but it's different when the business people themselves talk to other business people. It's very different when this happens. So they are much more convinced when conversation is peer to peer. This is the first pillar, shall I say, the first front where Fiesp program for early childhood acts. We have important alliances for the project, such as the Jose Luis Foundation Red Nation, who were with us in the construction at this first stage, and then which enabled us to open another part of the same project, which is to activate a network of companies and businesses and business people for investment in projects, either for the workers of their industries or for the whole production chain or for the community itself. At this time, the network is active, and we are happy to have UNICEF, 19UA, Maria Cecilia Soltviridao, and many others. It's an alliance which is growing stronger to attract businesses and business people who will build or create a strong impact on society. And we're now joined to Maria Cecilia Soto and United Way, who are preparing a guide for support of early childhood to reproduce and publicize the initiatives, the successful initiatives of companies in favor of early childhood. It'll be a guide with more than 600 good practices that'll be available on a platform where companies will have access and can choose their good practice. They can copy it, they can adopt it, understand the benefits, the impacts, that they have caused in their own company, and the roads that were followed to get to this point. This is one of the practices that we are doing on this first front. So a time to attract businesses or business people who will become familiar with the subject, talk to other business people, and become ambassadors and investors. Fiesp has an entity in Brazil called, I don't know if you know it, outside Brazil, Social Service of the Industry. It's an institution created first to support industry workers. It has a strong action in social services, as its name says. But here in Sao Paulo, its action is very strong regarding education, in basic education, and also as a project for early childhood. And we support and extend this action. There's a system called SESI teaching system, which involves a methodology for local governments, the city councils who are responsible for child education in Brazil. This methodology involves making an agreement with the cities and training teachers and providing any support they need to have unification and to make known and to provide systemic work in education, because we believe that care for early childhood should be seen as an intersectorial policy, starting with child education, going through all the other issues that you already know about healthcare, nutrition, and the SESI methodology prioritizes this type of care. So there are agreements and covenants with local governments, and we already attend to more than 23,000 children for 0 to 3 years old, and more than 40,000 children of 4 to 6 years old. We also manage daycare centers. She asked if that's the right word in Spanish. Yes, creche or daycare centers for industrial units, which are outsourced. The SESI, the social service, helps industries to provide spaces, adequate spaces for, or so that workers can keep their children at their workplaces, at these daycare centers. And this is part of the FIESP-CSP project for early childhood. Since 2017, the project has been ongoing, and we're now extending the amount of industries which are having policies for their employees, ranging from flexible schedules, maternity and paternity leave, and all those policies which have been mentioned here, and work for the community and for society, civil society. So we believe that industry and the productive sector has an essential role by investing in these programs. And this is an important way to ensure equal opportunities and contribute to the reduction of the inequality which we live with here, and which have been made worse by the pandemic. I'm open to questions if you want to ask. Thank you so much. I'm Brazilian, so it's a little bit difficult for me to speak in Spanish. Thank you. Thank you, Grácia. And reality is that our Brazilian siblings make a much greater effort to talk in Spanish than what the rest of Latin America does to speak in Portuguese. So we really appreciate your effort. Thank you so much. And also Eduardo. Now I will invite Carolina Crosta, Business Coordinator of Telefónica Movistar in Argentina. Carolina, go ahead. Hello, everybody. There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Carolina Crosta Blanco. I'm from Business Coordinator in Telefónica Argentina. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. We are highly motivated to be able to provide our vision and our experience. First, for those who don't know us, Telefónica is one of the biggest communications operator worldwide, 113,000 employees in 14 countries, and particularly in Argentina, because I'm going to talk about Argentina Telefónica experience. We've been working 30 years as Movistar Argentina. We have about 14,000 employees and 21 million accesses that we manage over 35,000 kilometers. Today we talk about measures promoting and supporting early childhood by the private sector. I thought about what I could tell you that would be interesting or valuable to you. And I thought I could organize this with 3 pillars, or 3 main ideas that I want to leave you. One, the need to have a cross-sectional approach linked to wider notions to make them sustainable. On the other hand, that approach has to be inclusive and versatile and dynamic. And finally, the multi-sectoral approach. So my first idea, which is cross-sectional approach linked to a wider and into early childhood, we have to talk about care. So this is people's lives, management of care, what is involved in coordinating schedules, feeding, nutrition, education, and so on, and self-care. This is something we learned in the organization. In our country, and probably it happens in other countries too, anything to do with organization of care is responsibility of homes, and within the homes of women. So when we're talking about care, somehow of early childhood, we are talking about something connected to inequality. In consequence, it will be linked with an exercise of rights. You might wonder, how does that connect to Telefónica? It connects with our organizational strategy, because we have a strong focus on human rights. We want to favor and conserve welfare of societies where we work, where Telefónica is present. This human rights policy we express through our policies inside and outside of the organization. We transfer it to all our groups of interest. So that you know, when I talk about 14,000, they're our own employees. We have almost the same amount through our supply chain. In this exercise of making this link with a wider strategy focused on human rights and children's rights, our participation had an important role in a work group called Empresas que Cuidan, YELA, for gender equality in Argentina. And working with these groups, we materialized the connection between our policies and the needs of early childhood and care in general. At the same time, as Grácia said just now, what is the contribution and the connection of these measures with the 2030 agenda, with the Sustainable Development Goals? And why do we do this in the company? Because our contribution to sustainable development goals is a fundamental approach for continuity and sustainability in our business strategy. Part of that implies having diversity as a competitive tool. For us, diversity is a competitive element and is within our agenda for talent management. So I told you it's a cross-sectional approach, and the lines of works that we have at Telefónica regarding equality, diversity, and rights, conciliation of personal life, family life, and working life of people is important. And this is where we try to make this not just words, but to be translated into policies and concrete steps. So I'll tell you about what our experience was when we implemented policies and practices regarding care of early childhood and human rights. We were able to associate concrete notions to the mission and values of the company, take it to an effective field. As I told you, we are more than 113,000 employees worldwide, so we have marketing that improves standards constantly. Each operator has its regulatory framework. And to be a benchmark, Argentina is a benchmark in this sense. And we try to challenge the standards of the rest of the operators and even of the industry itself, which has been also mentioned in previous panels, to improve our position as an employer, to ensure that people who we want will stay and to attract the people that we need. Finally, very briefly, to make an interpretation of the social agenda. What is happening in society is where we work. What contributions can we make that the social agenda will understand as relevant? On the one hand, it allows this. I'll give you a couple of examples. I won't provide a lot of details because I need to respect my time and not be too long, but I want to tell you a little description of what happens in Argentina. Up to March 2020, until COVID began, 71% of the companies in the private sector offered teleworking and 80% offered flexibility in income. What do? We want to accompany our employees in the most important points in their life. So what do? We have long maternity leave, long paternity leave, leaves for same-sex parents, leaves for newborns who are hospitalized. That time won't be counted as their leave. We'll start counting from the time they get home. We will have installation of lactation rooms. We will have raised awareness of the importance of early childhood, the importance of nutrition as a means to create a link among caretakers. The dimensions of co-responsibility, trying to promote and support a pattern where caregivers have the same level of responsibility, from children's rights to promoting equality that as I mentioned before. Right now, this health crisis, we are finishing a process to have advice of doulas, because there are so many health care networks which have been suspended at this time that it's important for family planning and collaborators who are thinking of, or employees who are thinking of having a family. They need to have some kind of support and tribe, so to say. This is for you to have some idea of the relevance of this topic for us. We had also taken to some actions which are a little more distant from that, but connected to promoting in early childhood responsible use of technology. What does this mean to us? It means not including in our advertising or our contents any children in early childhood using technology. At this time where educational continuity and even relationships due to the pandemic means that screens have to be used too early, we're promoting a healthy, ethical, and responsible use. We provide communications. Finally, violence in homes. Grácia or Cristina also mentioned this. It's also an important topic. We also tackle this issue because even though there's a lot of stress on gender violence, in homes where there is gender violence, the children are also victims. So we work on this in Argentina. 25% of homes are affected by some kind of violence. So we can't leave this issue aside. It is essential to develop a care policy based on gender focus and equality. Second relevant point is the focus has to be versatile and inclusive. When we think about policies for care, we are based on vertical criteria that based on the right for care goes beyond the category of our employee. It's providing care for everybody, co-responsibility, promoting patterns for involvement of fathers, mothers. We have an organization where 70% of our employees are male, recognizing the different family formations, so it has to be inclusive. And this will lead us to see how we can provide leaves for same-sex parents, and they also have to be sustainable in terms of financing. When we think of a measure or an action, we have to decide what investment financially will this involve, or human resources, and count this as a business plan and ensure that it will be sustainable. Because if we implement an access, we are not going to cancel it. And about versatility, as I said, I must admit that we have had a parenthesis with the COVID since March 2020, because even though we used to do a lot of remote working, teleworking, for our employees and our clients, I can't say that COVID didn't challenge us. It showed us the need to re-signify and reorganize these measures at every level and to be careful with their action. They represent, if there has been a measure, if there has been inequality, COVID has made it even worse. So our groups of interest then are not only our employees, but all their family group as well. We work from home with our families. I'm talking to you and I can hear my son and my husband at the same time. So all our measures have to take into account this kind of situation. We also understand that the care networks are suspended. There are no daycare centers, no schools, no grandparents, no uncles and aunts. And you know more than I do, for early childhood, it's essential for the whole family group and emotional health, psychological health, and welfare in general. And another concept with COVID is intersectionality. We had to reformulate. There is not one single solution. Even though we're 14,000, we have to look at each case individually. For instance, homes which have disabled children, although there are general measures, we need to have versatility for specific situations and try to accompany each family of our employers in the best way possible. And the final concept, I'm nearly done, which has also been mentioned, is multi-sectorial support. Once we know that linking care is to link it to the right to care, it's not only extending, but we also need a multi-sectorial approach, include the responsibilities that different actors have and different points of interest, societies, families, organizations, private sector, and state. Promote policies for care of early childhood is essential. This is sustainability of life, and it's an opportunity to develop a joint agenda in cooperation. So we do promote, and we are convinced of the importance of the dialogue between private and public sectors, and to reach a new pact to design better society, better economies, now more than ever within this context of a health crisis, which in Argentina is also turning into a social and economic crisis. It is essential to rethink things in this way. So I think my time's up because I can see Ariel. So thanks. Thank you, Carolina. We have had 4 excellent presentations, which have generated scores of questions. But time is a tyrant, so we'll try and do the best possible. So I'll ask the panelists to look at the question and answer. There are some very specific questions for each of you. Some of you have already been answering on the chat these specific questions. That will be helpful. So looking through all the questions, I want to organize them in 3 areas. As we have very little time, I will present the 3 areas at the same time and then give you each a few minutes to answer. Will probably be a little bit longer than the planned time, but I think it's worth it. I also want to invite Eduardo Queiroz to answer one of the questions. I'll explain in a minute. 3 topics that arose repeatedly in the comments. One is the elephant in the room, how to generate motivation in companies when there is none. This was interesting because we got it from different countries. There's a question from Chile saying, they notice in Chile the private sector is less modern than in other countries, that's been described in other countries. How do you unlock this? We heard this from somebody from Africa who noticed the difference with Latin America. We had a comment from Cuba asking, what about Cuba in this context? How can we mobilize and get support from companies or businesses which are foreign? And a question about advocacy tools. So there's one block, you've all talked about this, but some recommendation or some strong idea, thinking about countries where the topic is more blocked. How could you unblock it? A second group of topics is about COVID, unsurprisingly. That's our reality today. Somebody from Bangladesh asked, what about childcare, the so-called daycare centers? In Spanish, the name is not appropriate, guarderia. What about these services for daycare so that parents can work, even those who are actually working from home? Some comment on the COVID, which was also mentioned in the context of schools. Perhaps internet access, Carolina, is something you could mention from Telefónica. And finally, the other large elephant in the room, which is positioning on public agenda. This is about alliances. Can you give a recommendation about how to influence, particularly in countries where this is blocked? Give an example how the private sector can help in this regard. I know Eduardo has something to say about this. So we'll go in the opposite direction of how we work. We'll start with Eduardo. And then we'll do Carolina, Gracia, Cristina, and Eva. Eduardo, go ahead. Thank you. Excuse me, I had to go out of my computer because internet failed and now I'm on my phone. One interesting point in the questions and listening to the different presenters is how to get business people to listen. Why is their influence important? Why is it important for them to have policies in their companies and work during advocacy in the countries and cities? I had an interesting experience in Brazil when I was managing the Cira Foundation. When we work with early childhood or education or youth, we talk very technically about the brain and synapses, so how to translate this to make it understandable. We talk about it in a language which ordinary people don't understand. So it was very helpful to what we did in Brazil. And Eva's doing this in Mexico. I don't know, it's also being done in Colombia. It is translating science and coming out of our, let's say, church and our habit of talking on a level that only we understand. That project worked very well in Brazil, and I think it's also in other countries, but we have to be careful not to speak technically, but rather to speak clearly so that people or business people can understand us and can talk to their employers and their own families. Thank you, Eduardo. We heard you fine even though you're on your phone. Carolina? Based on one of the triggers, which is how to motivate business people in the private sector, I think it's essential. That's what I tried to explain, that it's associated to vectors or values that the company already has. The company shouldn't have to force these. In Telefónica, particularly in Telefónica Argentina, we are sure that the way to sustain and generate a link with society and our clients is by promoting other values that go beyond our product and service proposal, beyond the business side of it. When you choose a business or a service, you choose the values that the company promotes, the links it has with society. So there's an indicator, a business indicator that can be measured. Beyond the human rights policy, there is a business plan which enables you to see if you're making progress in that sense. Even retaining talent, we're all looking to have the best talent possible in our organizations, to develop the best business proposal, to have the best talent today. When an employee chooses a company, the employee is not only choosing the company and the salary, the employee is also choosing the culture, the values of the organization, the benefits. Okay? So in this regard, we look at it from talent retention, business attributes, company reputation. These are KPIs which can be measured. This is not philanthropy for us. I never talked about you. I didn't tell you about Fundación Telefónica Foundation. This is simply business, good business. So the participation, how to motivate other people in the industry. You need to do some benchmarking within the country itself and outside the country, because this is what shows us what our competitors are doing, and clearly something that motivates or challenges or gets you out of your comfort zone if you're a private actor. I'm not sure if that provides an answer or if I'm missing something. That was very clear, very useful. I know you could talk more about this, but we don't have that much time. Thank you. Oh, Grácia will speak next. In the same direction as Carolina, I agree with her. There are motivators, which are values, purposes, and you have to be at a level where people think, where are we at this level of development? But there's also the business question. I tried to show that for us in Fiespi, social responsibility is not philanthropy, but business management. This gives competitivity, this gives attraction, retention. It's not a question of I can choose to be like this. No, you must be like this, because otherwise your competitors leave you behind. Here, one of the things we chose to talk about, we are at 4.0 stage, which is connected to automation, robotics, etc. This is brain, this is not hands. If the brain is formed in early childhood, and this is what Eduardo said, how does this translate, this subject about science, for people who are not familiar with it? If the brain is formed or deformed or not well formed during that period of life, you have to invest to have workers of the future. You are preparing the industry of the future, the work of the future. You have to prepare people right from early childhood, because if you don't do that now, you will invest much more in training and a series of other things, which the public knows very well, but without the return in the same proportion that you would have if the investment were made right now. If we look at the Heckman equation, Reckman equation, for each dollar invested in the first stage, the return will be much greater than if it's made in other stages of life. So this translation of science for business people, showing how it relates to the results, to the bottom line for business, if they are not moved by values, human rights, because they're not yet in that point of maturity, at least it will take into account competitiveness and the need to prepare to be the industry of the future and have the workers of the future. So you need to find all different kinds of arguments. Of course, we are going to talk about social responsibility as well as a business, but showing that outcomes come, and investing in early childhood is not just for governments, it's something for everybody. If we want a society which is more fair, more developed, it's a challenge for all of us. Thank you. Yes, we have to find everybody and convince them to do this work right now. Yes, very clear. Thank you so much. Gracias. Clear and powerful. So, Cristina, your turn. I don't want to repeat, so I'll just add 2 points. Philanthropy has been evolving as it has been evolving towards something having an impact on society, where capital investment also plays an important part through mechanisms such as bonds for social impact, investment bonds which also look at projects and have, rather than social return, have an economic return. So I think the world has also been migrating towards different kind of investment to include companies of the private sector, and education is responsible of us, the foundations who are on the other side. That's one thing I want to tell you. It's concerned with education that we as foundations have to provide. On the other hand, it's not only the rational and the hard facts and evidence which are important to business people, economic return, but also the more emotional and engagement side of employees and business people. This is where you have volunteer programs, corporate volunteer programs. While they begin to feel and experience the importance of investment in early childhood, they will be able to invest with being more convinced. So you have to try and get a balance between the more rational and economic side and the emotional side of people for the cause. I have a Kate, my board of directors, many years ago, a businessman who was completely rational and was not interested in investing in early childhood, and after a lot of reasoning and explanations and evaluating numbers, he became the business person who financed the documentary Brain Matters. So you can achieve transformations, you can educate business people to reach that understanding through this double approach. Thank you very much. Now, Eva. Thank you. After all, listening to all the other panelists and those extraordinary closures, I'm going to echo them, but sometimes that's good. As I said at the beginning, companies and businessmen have to see the connection of the success of the company in connection to success of society. There is a clear connection, and we should think about the stakeholders in the company as itself, and think about the employees and their families, the investors, the clients. This whole ecosystem is made up of people, and at the end of the day, this is a question I'm often asked: why do you invest in early childhood? People inside and outside the company ask me this. Well, if you have anything to do with people, you sell to people, you employ people. Early childhood are people. They're children in development. And sometimes they ask us, shouldn't this make sense for companies who make, say, diapers, toys? but in the end, we have to realize that this artificial categorization that we have among the different types of industries and what they do, and their investment or philanthropy, we should all be investing in education. We should all be investing in early childhood, because this is the way in which companies will be able to have a larger market, access to better capital, have labor in the future. Sometimes we go into these dichotomies by saying, are children the present or are they the future? Well, they're both. They're the present and they're the future, and both are equally important, and we need to invest in children because they have rights, and also because it's an efficient way to develop society as a whole. It's also important to look at another point. It's already been mentioned. It's the subject of COVID and family care, which you asked us about, Ariel, and I think it's no coincidence that we're all women here. Sometimes it's funny because you have to find, in some meetings, it's hard to find women, but in this case, we're mainly women. There's a connection between gender and early childhood. And we need to make visible that success of companies, just as it includes or involves inclusion and diversity within companies, it also involves influence on early childhood as something talked about and included as part of company welfare, not only until people understand that it's good business to invest in early childhood. This is going to be a subject relegated to philanthropy, families, not rather than companies. But I think this should change. Early childhood and investing in families is investing in collective welfare of society. So we also have to stop seeing the separation between violence at home and violence in the street. It's all connected. It's all the same thing. So we need to stop thinking that way. If we want to resolve all these problems that affect us as a society, we need to all become involved, and the private sector has an important role to play in this. Thank you. I believe that your last idea summarizes much of this discussion. If we want to transform our societies which are highly unequal want to transform them into more functional societies, the best investment is investment in early childhood. COVID only has made this need even greater and more urgent and more dramatic. You have all given not only good arguments, but also concrete examples, either of a particular company or groups of companies, and how to advance. Clearly, there's a lot of work ahead of us. We know that what has been presented today is the forefront, and we need to raise the floor and attract and drive greater participation and intelligent participation from the private sector. I know that many questions haven't been answered. Some of them have been responded by the panelists on the chat. Others will remain for another opportunity. As usual, there will be a summary of the event, and we will post the videos in Spanish and in English on the website. Our little contribution for those who haven't been able to come today or want to continue with the discussion will have easy access. This is a series of meetings. This is the third meeting that we have organized, and we're going to continue organizing other ones. We haven't got any dates yet, but towards the end of September or early October, we will have another meeting of this kind. We appreciate the participation of course, all the panelists and also all the participants who book time in their complex agendas to share with us. We particularly appreciate that colleagues from other continents are connected and have participated so actively with comments. We are very proud and filled with passion to know that what we talk about within the family, Latin American family, also reaches other parts of the world. We have exceeded our time, and I want to thank everyone in the name of ECTA and UNICEF, United Way, the panelists. Thank everybody, and hope you continue to be healthy and well, and that we meet again soon. Regards to everybody. Goodbye. Thanks.